Before anyone ever warned you, it already happened. You felt it in your chest first. That quiet confusion when something didn't add up, but you ignored it. You replayed the conversation in your head at night, wondering how you went from confident to apologizing for things you didn't even do. And the scariest part? You thought it was love. You're not weak for that. You're human. And no one ever told you how manipulation actually feels when it's happening in real time. Welcome to Female Code Unlocked, the place where we don't sugarcoat reality, we decode it. If this kind of psychological truth hits close to home, subscribe now. Not because it's trendy, but because clarity is survival. Here's the brutal truth no one tells men. Manipulation doesn't start with control, it starts with connection. It starts with her mirroring your values, your pain, your dreams. She listens intensely at first. She studies you. She learns what makes you feel seen and what makes you feel insecure. Not consciously evil, not cartoon villain behavior, just instinct, power, and emotional leverage. You mistake emotional intensity for emotional depth. You think, she gets me. What you don't realize is that being understood and being managed feel almost identical in the beginning. Picture this. You express a boundary, calmly, respectfully. Suddenly her mood shifts. She goes quiet, cold, disappointed. Nothing is said, but everything is felt. And your nervous system does the math before your logic can catch up. You feel tension, guilt, the urge to fix it. So you soften your boundary. You explain yourself. You retreat. That's not compromise. That's conditioning. Manipulation doesn't look like aggression. It looks like withdrawal. It looks like tears at exactly the right moment. It looks like affection being given, then subtly removed. And slowly, without realizing it, you start living in reaction instead of intention. You choose words carefully. You anticipate her emotions. You abandon your natural masculine certainty to maintain emotional peace. Here's the part that hurts to hear. The moment you become predictable emotionally, you become controllable psychologically. Strong men don't get manipulated because they're stupid. They get manipulated because they're empathetic. Because they were taught that being good means being accommodating. Because no one taught them that emotional strength includes emotional limits. The real manipulation happens inside you. The internal negotiation. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should just let it go. I don't want to lose her. And that last line, that fear of loss, is the lever. The more you fear losing her, the more power she holds. Not because she's cruel, but because power always flows toward the person who can walk away first. You stop being manipulated the moment you stop outsourcing your self-worth. The moment her approval is no longer oxygen. The moment silence doesn't scare you, distance doesn't threaten you, and conflict doesn't collapse you. Manipulative dynamics die when they're no longer fed emotionally. When guilt doesn't move you. When moods don't steer you. When affection is appreciated, but never begged for. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming centered. Because the man who knows who he is cannot be pulled out of frame. He doesn't argue for his boundaries. He doesn't chase clarity. He doesn't negotiate his self-respect. And when that shift happens, something fascinating occurs. Either the manipulation stops, or the relationship does. And both outcomes are freedom. You start noticing it only after you slow down. The patterns, the timing, the emotional loops that once felt chaotic suddenly look intentional. Not planned in a mastermind way, but shaped by instinct, insecurity, and unspoken power games. She gets upset right when you're about to focus on your purpose. She needs reassurance right when you start pulling back emotionally. She questions your loyalty right when you assert independence. And every time, you're pulled back into proving yourself. That's the trap most men never see. You think the problem is her behavior, but the real leverage is your reaction. Manipulation survives on emotional urgency. It needs you to respond quickly, to explain, to fix, to chase clarity like it's oxygen. The moment you stop rushing to stabilize her emotions, the dynamic changes. Because here's a psychological law most men were never taught. Whoever is least reactive controls the frame. When you pause instead of panic, when you observe instead of absorb, when you respond instead of react, you reclaim authority over your own nervous system. And that's when manipulation starts to feel uncomfortable for the person using it. Think about it. Withdrawal only works if you fear distance. Guilt only works if you accept responsibility for emotions that aren't yours. Tears only work if they override truth. A centered man doesn't harden his heart. He grounds it. He listens without bending. He cares without collapsing. He stays present without surrendering his spine. This is where many men get confused. They think strength means becoming emotionally unavailable, silent, detached, cold. That's not strength. That's trauma wearing armor. Real strength is emotional neutrality, the ability to stay calm when tension rises, to hold eye contact when emotions escalate, to say, "I hear you," without saying, "I submit." And here's the part that changes everything. Manipulation ends when consequences quietly appear. Not shouted, not threatened, just lived. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying reasonable boundaries. You stop chasing after emotional storms you didn't create. You let discomfort exist. And that silence, that calm refusal to dance in chaos, it's louder than any argument. Because manipulation expects movement. It expects correction. It expects you to fold. When you don't, when you remain steady, the power balance recalibrates. Some women will adjust, they'll soften, they'll respect you more, even if they don't say it out loud. Others will escalate, push harder, create drama, accuse you of changing. That accusation is always a confession. You didn't change. You stopped being pliable. And this is where men face a choice that defines their future. Do you return to the familiar pain of being controlled? Or do you step into the unfamiliar peace of self-respect? Because once you see manipulation clearly, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to chasing approval without feeling hollow. You can't beg for affection without feeling diminished. You start choosing differently, speaking less, meaning more. And something unexpected happens. You become calmer, more grounded, more dangerous, not to others, but to dysfunctional dynamics. You don't need to call out manipulation. You don't need to confront every tactic. You simply stop rewarding behavior that costs you your identity. And that's when the real shift happens. Not in her, in you. Because the man who cannot be emotionally hijacked cannot be emotionally controlled. And once that truth lands in your body, not your mind, you'll never play the same game again. At some point, the fog lifts. Not all at once, but enough for you to finally see yourself clearly. You notice how quiet your mind becomes when you stop chasing emotional resolution. How much energy returns when you stop managing someone else's inner world. How powerful it feels to stand still while chaos tries to pull you off center. That's when you realize something most men never do. Manipulation didn't steal your power. You loaned it, hoping to be chosen, loved, validated. And the moment you stop lending it out, the debt comes due. This is where your presence changes. You don't fill silence anymore. You don't rush to reassure. You don't negotiate with disrespect disguised as emotion. You let people reveal themselves by how they behave when they don't get immediate access to you. Because here's the truth, no one says out loud. Healthy connection doesn't punish boundaries. It doesn't demand emotional obedience. It doesn't require you to shrink to keep the peace. When manipulation disappears, what remains is clarity. You start asking better questions, internally. Why does this feel draining? Why do I feel anxious after conversations instead of grounded? Why do I feel responsible for emotions I didn't create? Those questions are dangerous, in the best way. They wake you up. You begin choosing calm over chemistry, consistency over intensity, respect over attraction. And that shift alone rewires everything. Some women will feel it immediately. They'll sense that they can no longer move you with moods or mixed signals. They'll either rise to meet your steadiness or drift away when they can't. Let them. Because the man who can walk away from emotional chaos without anger has already won. You no longer need to prove your worth. You no longer need to fix misunderstandings that aren't misunderstandings at all. You no longer confuse love with anxiety. You understand now. Love feels safe. Manipulation feels urgent. Love expands you. Manipulation contracts you. And the moment you trust your body more than your fear of loss, you become immune to games. Not bitter, not closed, just clear. Clear about who you are. Clear about what you tolerate. Clear about the cost of staying where your soul is slowly negotiated away. This isn't about dominating women. It's about mastering yourself. Because the man who is emotionally sovereign doesn't need control and can't be controlled. And once you step into that identity, you don't just stop being manipulated. You start being respected by others and finally by yourself. If this hit deeper than you expected, stay here. This channel exists for men who are done being confused, drained, and played. This is Female Code Unlocked. And once you see the code clearly, you never unsee it.